Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast to review the Music City Grand Prix at Nashville Superspeedway. We're recording a day later than we hoped to after a wild weekend affected by the weather. But we're here. We had a great conclusion to IndyCar in Nashville once again, and a lot of talking points, as there always is, following pretty much any IndyCar race. So a bit of a false alarm on Sunday evening, a bit annoying for me because I didn't go to bed until 3 o'clock expecting a race, and then I had work the next morning. So a bit of a catastrophic weekend. Watching it on a Monday, I don't know about you, it felt bit weird. Like, I don't know. But does that then feel like a Sunday? I've got no idea. But first time, I think, since 2018, a race had been delayed until the Monday. And it was just felt a bit strange getting home from work and watching IndyCar. I've never done that before. So first time for everything is what they say.
Yeah, I do agree. It was a weird old weekend. Like, I mean, obviously a regular race weekend, not on an oval, is only 3 days. So technically it was still only a 3-day weekend, but it did kind of throw everything a little bit out of kilter. Like, I did kind of come away from last night kind of forgetting it was a Monday, but I don't know. I kind of come away from it all thinking it was all just a bit of a shame because we were going to have 300 laps and 399 miles. It would have been the longest non-Indy 500 race for, I think, 8 years since Pocono 2018, because Pocono 2019 was shortened when it was supposed to be a 500-mile race, I think. And all of this obviously meant we lost the big lead-in from the World Cup final as well, this master plan that Fox had by moving Nashville from the finale. And that was all just a bit of a shame. And it, obviously ends up being a shortened 225 laps on a Monday afternoon while most of the fan base are working. So, yeah, it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. The race was, it was all right. I think the weather on Sunday actually ended up hurting the race on Monday because all the rubber got washed away. So, yeah, I think I kind of come away from the weekend thinking what could have been, but still a lot of stories to tell, and it's certainly not a weekend we will be forgetting in a while.
I'm sure it's a weekend that Álex Palou won't be forgetting in a while either. Obviously, Spain winning the World Cup on Sunday, his home nation, the only Spanish driver in either the IndyCar or Indy Next paddock. So very jubilant day for him there. And then he rounds it off on the Monday by taking his first victory at Nashville. First time he gets the elusive guitar for winning, which is probably the coolest trophy out there. And extends the championship lead back over 80 points, and we'll probably get to it a little bit more later, but that kind of feels like that might be game for the championship in 2026. It wasn't already over, but I mean, it was kind of your typical Palou performance, really. This time it was on an oval where he's kind of in the third, fourth realm, like staying in the picture, but doesn't seem like maybe the fastest guy in the opening stint, and then comes to the strategy. Admittedly, this time they got a little bit lucky. Obviously, that first pit stop under green, Palou came in literally as the yellow was coming out. They said it was a 0.3 difference between them coming in and the yellow coming out. So had Palou broken a little bit earlier into the pit entry, he would have been penalised. So they got a bit fortunate with that one. And then obviously the second caution, they extended their stint length and obviously got the yellow in their favour there as well. So 2 well-timed yellows for Álex Palou, but nevertheless, he's still to do the job. He had to defend superbly against Joseph Newgarden in the last 40 laps or so, which is not an easy job for any driver to do. And it's obviously quite clear that his overall craft has continued to improve, and that he can really get the job done when he needs to on ovals. And it was another superb performance from Palou on kind of a weekend where he kind of felt a little bit of an underdog. Not many people really expect him to pull this out of the hat. And I don't think it was the fastest car by any stretch of the imagination, but his execution for strategy and now kind of learning the lines of ovals, when to go high, when to go low, and that racecraft on ovals, which he hasn't had before, was really kind of in his arsenal, and it was on display once again.
Yeah, I think it was definitely one of his quieter weekends. Like, he was always there or thereabouts. He qualified fourth, and he was in the game all race, but it didn't really feel like until they kind of got that fortunate break under yellow he was really going to fight for the win necessarily. I don't think he was necessarily quite had the pace of the very quickest, but again, just made it work. And we always say you make your own luck, and I still think that kind of applies here. But Barry Wanzer, his strategist, was very, very keen to point out that this was genuinely quite lucky. And I think obviously that 0.3 margin between going into a closed pit and being penalised and making it in was a pretty fortunate break. But as you say, like he held on so well when he was out front. And I mean, especially in those closing laps, he had a train of 3 Penske's behind him, obviously the real kind of all-powerful cars on ovals, and just was utterly flawless. He was decisive when it came to traffic, and I mean, it was quite it was an impressive call actually on strategy in that final stint, because all of the Penske's were on alternate tyres. Palou had put on primary tyres. They hadn't actually got any alternates left for that final stint. But he's obviously a master on that harder compound, and yeah, got the job done. And I would be surprised if this wasn't the weekend that we kind of look back on as really killing the championship. And I think actually specifically in the moment where that third caution comes out and Kirkwood's in the pits and kind of just gets hosed. I think he restarted down in 12th, then he made it back up to 10th. And, he could have stayed within that around 50, 60 point range. I mean, Kirkwood was looking good to possibly win this race for a good while. So pretty unfortunate for him there. And yeah, probably is the one that makes it dead and buried, really. I mean, we obviously have a couple of unknowns left in Markham and in Washington, D.C. and Milwaukee's always a bit of a question mark for Palou, but he's also got some pretty strong tracks coming up as well in the likes of Portland and Laguna Seca. So yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, we've seen this year, like, there have been some pretty big swings pretty quickly, but this was, probably a bit of a deflating one for all of those that we perceive to possibly be in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, just to tell you how good Palou is at Portland and Laguna Seca, he's never finished off the podium at Laguna Seca. And at Portland, he had one finish outside the top 3 in 4 or 5 attempts. So it'd be pretty difficult to topple him there, barring any disaster. So, 83 points, as you say, that is almost a 2 race victories gap to Kirkwood and Lucas behind. So, bit of a missed opportunity for Andretti. Maybe we'll go on to that a little bit later. Kirkwood took a pretty impressive pole on the Saturday, and he was good on I was about to say Sunday. He's good on the Monday. That's weird to say. He was good on the Monday, but it didn't feel like he was quite the one in victory contention. But let's circle back to Palou. It was a supreme performance once again, and I think this is a lot like we're quite used to him being the best car all weekend long, dominating in qualifying, taking runaway victories, or even victories like we're used to, where he kind of there or thereabouts and takes the victory. The fact they're just executing on weekends where they're clearly not the quickest guy, and maybe they have a disadvantage situation like the tyre in the final stint, and the fact they still burn off every time is really incredible. But back to the point, what is Palou's weakness? This year he's had a bit of a rot on tyre burn ovals. I'm not going to say obviously Gateway he ran out of fuel, and Phoenix he did crash, but in none of those weekends he looked like he was really, really competitive. It didn't look like he was going to compete for victory. Here, they just come out of nowhere. It's yeah, we can compete for victory, no problem at all. So, what is his weakness? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this just kind of feels like the perennial conversation, really, and I completely agree. There seems to, even where this season it feels like they have maybe had a few more shortcomings, I don't feel like we've seen anything that's exposed Palou as being bad at anything at all. It's just simply been they've had a bit more misfortune, a couple of things that maybe they've got breaks with in the past just haven't gone their way, a couple of bits of execution here and there. But yeah, I mean, he's got an 83 point lead. I mean, it's remarkable really going into these final 6 races. And I mean, once again, we could be looking at, if things do pan out this way, him seeing the championship with 2 races to spare, which obviously is pretty rare. But I guess this is a nice place to actually segue to the driver who, I mean, is now vaulted up to second in points, David Malukas, who, I mean, he had quite the whirlwind of a weekend. I felt like it was almost a microcosm of his IndyCar career to date, where it's kind of really been a story of grit and of defiance. And I mean, for these 3 days since he crashed 20 minutes into opening practice on Saturday, it was just an absolute whirlwind. I mean, I think we all feared a little bit when he crashed, and replay showed he whacked his steering wheel off with his knee, and it took a while for him to actually get out the car. And he did walk away unassisted in the end, but ultimately was taken to hospital for checks. And Connor Daly was limbering up to possibly tick one of the 2 remaining teams off his list, but then Penske realised that if he was to shake down the car in qualifying, he'd be restricted to race, and they didn't want to commit to that yet. And it was a good decision in the end, because 5 hours on from being shipped off to hospital, Malukas was back and gets back in the saddle for final practice and tops the session, which I think was a pretty strong recovery in itself. And then that's before we get on to what happened 2 days later on Monday, and goes from plumb last in the field to finishing on the podium, which was, I mean, he admitted it was probably the best drive of his career, and I don't think there's any begrudging that really. And he was pretty glad that the race wasn't on Sunday in the end. He said that it probably would have been a bit of a race of survival at that point, given it was only one day on from the crash, and he was feeling a little bit worse for wear. He was wishing for the rain. He actually went to sleep before they'd officially announced the postponement. So he was, I think he felt if he wasn't awake, then there was no way they were going to race. They were going to race on Sunday, and yeah, obviously panned out that way. And he said got to Monday and it was game on, and yeah, boy, it was game on, because I mean he didn't make superb progress in that kind of those early 20 laps, and then they made the big call under the early caution for Collette and came in, stayed out, one of only 3 drivers to stay out. And yeah, it was pretty impressive what he did on that restart on used primary tyres against new alternates of those behind, just to kind of charge away. And he was up to 3 seconds plus clear of Scott McLaughlin, his teammate, at that point, which was pretty remarkable. And he got pegged back again by a yellow later in the race, made it back again. He was one of very few drivers who seems to be able to actually make moves in a race that really became quite a single groove affair. But oh my word, gave it his all.
I felt like this would be a perfect weekend for David Malukas to win. Like his ultimate, he gets knocked down but comes straight back up, and the fighting spirit would be like the perfect story if he won. Not quite, but we were very close. And that first victory, I know we still lose it. Like we are so close to getting that first victory for David Malukas, and I'm sure we'll come in due time. But I don't really have much more to add to what you said there. Just all round fantastic performance, came back fighting, and he really is a warrior. Like he just beat himself up quite a lot with his various different injuries, but he recovers every single time. And yeah, I mean, he was obviously in contention for the victory late on. He was really good in traffic. Like out of every car that we saw, he was for me. I mean, like we even saw it in pit cycles. Like once he came in before the others did, he was at the other side of the track compared to most of his competitors, and could make moves that I feel like we didn't see anybody else making much of the time. And obviously, once we got to the front, that would be a little bit more difficult. But his overall racecraft is just superb. It's just a shame coming those last couple of laps, it looked pretty difficult to overtake. But Ricky was saying it'll come with time. There's still 2 more over races this year, which he's got a crack at. But yeah, I mean, really, what more can you say? He's back up to second in the standings. Him and Kirk would have been flip-flopping for like the last 6 rounds. Like I wish one of them would just stay in second or third. But he overtakes Kirkwood once again, for probably about the 4th time, and Kirkwood inevitably take him back at Portland. So that's a rather intriguing battle for second, to be fair. But now the championship battle's gone, at least that's something which is going to be very close towards now the end of the season. And I can't quite believe we're 12 races in, Malukas is second in the points. Like if you said that pre-season, it would have been crazy. Like, you look at a podium, something like Nashville, and go, okay, that's going to be one of the standout results of the season. And obviously, it's a standout result considering the circumstances. But on paper, it's only his 5th podium of the year. It's like kind of expected now, which is kind of the crazy thing. Like his lack of bad weekends speaks a lot to how he's performed just overall this year, and the consistency has been really impressive. And if he finishes second this first season in Penske, that's going to be a mighty achievement. And then we go into next year thinking, okay, maybe he's the guy who can take it to Palou. Now he's got a season under his belt and looks pretty comfortable at all track types.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with kind of his circumspect view on the whole championship picture, because I mean, he's not getting carried away with people saying that he's in the fight, because he ultimately knows that an 83-point margin to someone like Palou with the tracks that Palou has coming up is pretty extensive. But I mean, he's just in such a good place. Like, he said that regardless of whether, he can hold on down the stretch, I guess even to second in points, because just to be at this position this deep in this first season at Penske, which was kind of, we all expected it to be a bit of a baptism of fire. I know people were doubting, obviously, what would be possible and, what he would be able to kind of produce filling the boots of, a legend like Power. But yeah, continues to really show. I mean, he started at the back and he's ended the race in the midst of his teammates. Like, he continues to really, in many ways, have the measure on them. Like, he was the quickest Penske car this weekend, I would pretty confidently say. But he's just kind of so happy with how things are going. Like, that really, obviously he's a a very upbeat character, but that particularly struck me after this race, just how, like, he said it plainly, like, he's just so happy with how this year is going, yeah, regardless of what might happen down the stretch. And I do look at Milwaukee and think, I don't know, it just feels like it would be a fitting way to end this, really, really impressive season if he was to go and get over the line there. And it feels like a pretty good opportunity.
I think it's only right we touch on the final podium sitter and Joseph Newgarden, who seemed very frustrated at the fact that he finished second. Obviously, the defending winner at Nashville. He's won both the non-Indy 500 oval races earlier this year at Phoenix and Gateway, and he qualified pretty well. Like, he was running at the front all day. He didn't get posed by yellow at any point, and maybe he wasn't leading for lots of the race, but he was kind of there in second, third, fourth, behind Malukas, behind Palou, behind Kirkwood at point. I didn't find him superb in traffic, like we've seen him excel out at the pass. It just didn't seem they quite had the window compared to Malukas, maybe even McLaughlin for that matter. But Newgarden is such a perennial force on ovals that he's going to be there at the end when push comes to shove and you're competing for the victory. And it just kind of felt that single lane race that we really saw throughout limited any opportunity for him to get past Palou unless Palou made a mistake, which is a bit of a shame. And he seemed pretty frustrated at the end of the race. I'm not really sure why. I guess maybe it's just he lost out on a win, but I think he drove well nonetheless.
I think the frustration came from the fact there weren't really many full stints. Like, yellows were kind of curtailing a lot of the stints, and obviously Newgarden in a lot of over races really tends to come into his own late in stints when he's kind of managed the tyres and looked after it. And yeah, I think that there was just a little bit of frustration there. That seemed to be it anyway. I know there was some people thinking maybe he was just annoyed with kind of the traffic and how Louis Foster maybe let Palou through quite routinely at the end, but he said it wasn't that at all. I think he was just frustrated with the situation, but he also did say that he kind of felt that's all the car had. So I'm not really sure why he was. I mean, he's a winner. Like, I guess no one likes finishing second particularly, and especially when he's been in that position for a lot of laps, kind of just pursuing the leader and just being unable to get past. But yeah, I think it was something to just do with the fact that stints weren't really shaking out and the race was being, cautions came out around 2 of the pit cycles and what ended up being a 3-stop race for the leaders. So I think he was a little bit annoyed by that. I think he also said that he felt like they could have done 500 miles and it would have been fine in the heat. But
I still don't like the fact Newgarden is, when he's upset, is still giving short interview answers to the broadcast or in press conferences or whatever. Like, it's just a bit like, there was that whole thing 2 years ago where he was doing it because he didn't like the way he was treated by people. And that's fair enough. It's not like people are treating him badly anymore in the media space or people are dragging him down over that. Like, give people actual answers. Like, this gimmick has been going on a little bit too long now, I think, for him not to, for the series broadcaster, to ask him a question, what could have been a big weekend, and for him to just say a one-line answer. Like, I get you're annoyed, but like, come on, show some people something. Like, we speak about having that human side, and Newgarden's come across like, he just comes across a bit robotic at times in the way that he does that sort of engagement. So
it's a tough one. Like, obviously we've never been in that position as an elite sports person, so it's like hard to kind of put ourselves in their shoes exactly. But yeah, I do kind of agree it comes across a bit disrespectful when they're showcasing what you're doing as a broadcaster. Like, I feel like you can probably do better than giving 10-word answers, but at the same time, he's just come out of heat of the battle, as we say. Temperatures are absolutely oppressive.
We'll round off with Team Penske on Scott McLaughlin, and I feel a bit bad for Scott McLaughlin on this one. Like, his win the streak is coming up to 2 years now, and this felt like his best chance of winning a race in quite a long time, to be honest. Like, he was competitive right from the start, obviously starting in third. He cycled to the front after that first pit stop phase when the free team absolutely nailed his stop. And it was kind of in the victory contention all there. It felt like it was going to be him versus Malukas. It was just who was going to be in the right strategy in the right time. And he seemed to be the guy who just got absolutely screwed the most by that final yellow. But to be fair to him, he came from, I believe it was 12th or around then, 11th, 12th, 13th, to recover all the way to 4th. And then his tyres just kind of went a little bit at the end, looked like he used a little bit too much of them, but still held on to the position that felt like he was going to have anyway, whether his tyres fell off or not. So, yeah, I feel a bit bad for him. Like that winless streak continues, and this felt like the best chance he had to overturn it. And this was one of his best drives I think he's put in a significant while. And it's not the first time since his last victory where just kind of timings of yellows has just really caught him out. And I think, if he won, nobody would have a problem with that because he drove superbly. So, yeah, shame there. That winless wait continues.
Yeah, he was 11th on that restart. And I think the progress that he made compared to, Kirkwood only gaining 2 positions from 12th, McLaughlin obviously gaining 7 from 11th was kind of evidence of, they were kind of the 2 guys who were fighting for the win for a lot of the day, obviously with kind of the wild card of Malukas on the alternate strategy. But it was probably kind of evidence that McLaughlin in that battle was the stronger guy all along. And I think along with Malukas probably had the best car out there. And I do agree this was the best it's probably his best performance of the season, at least the most competitive I feel like he's been. Obviously, he's had a couple of podiums honestly this year. But I still think this was, definitely the closest he's come to victory. Purely was unlucky. I think I look at some of the oval races this year, and that has felt like there's been a deficit between him and his teammates, particularly in the races. Like, he just hasn't really been a factor, and this felt very much like a return to what we were looking at the end of 2024, where McLaughlin was just about the best guy on ovals. So I think that's encouraging. It looked finally like he was, I don't know whether this is fair to say, but almost at one with the car again. Like, he just hasn't looked like he's had superb amounts of confidence in a lot. I mean, I guess in a lot of races, particularly on the ovals at points this year. I know the 500s may be an exception. That was a really strong run. But yeah, it felt like a return to form and hopefully a bit of a springboard, because it just has been a very quiet, pretty anonymous type season from him. So yeah, something to build on at last.
Kind of the other guy in that mix for the lead initially at the start was Carl Kirkwood. Took his second pole at Nashville, adding to his 2024 power. Andretti seemed to have a really good package out. And obviously, kept the lead fairly comfortably on the opening scene. Had a good race of Newgarden, kind of the first 10 laps, but it kind of felt the high line was pretty difficult to run for extended periods of time, unlike what we saw last year with O'Ward and Palou, and then we saw with Simpson and McLaughlin late on. But led comfortably, lost a little bit in the first stop, obviously lost out to McLaughlin, and obviously Malukas got ahead of him on strategy reasons. But he kind of stayed in the top 3 positions, obviously kind of second behind McLaughlin on strategy for a lot of the race. It didn't feel like he had a great car in traffic in comparison to maybe some of the others, but it was a competitive car nonetheless. But I mean, we definitely saw that car struggling in traffic on the final stint, where he made barely any progress compared to McLaughlin. So I don't know what the reasoning for that is, but a missed opportunity. Like, obviously you don't really blame him because he got absolutely stuffed by a yellow, and there's not much you can do about that. But like, from a championship perspective, when he took pole on the Saturday, it's like, okay, well, actually, does he have a chance to topple Palou? And could this be the last chance to make a points gain? If he wins and Palou's 4th or 5th, that's suddenly you're looking at an extra 15, 20 points gain, and the gap narrows a lot more. And suddenly it's now the complete opposite. Palou's basically got the title wrapped up. So like, you don't really begrudge him because he didn't do much wrong. It's just a bit of a shame, maybe a bit confusing as to why he couldn't make the progress in the final stint. Like, again, a good run, and Kirkwood's confidence on oval seems to just improve every race. Like, he genuinely is a very strong oval driver, which I don't think we would have said 24 months ago or 12 months ago. Like, he is a competitive oval driver pretty much every race we go to outside the Indianapolis 500. It's just kind of execution / racing and traffic can be a little bit of a problem, as we saw at Nashville.
I do agree completely. Like, he is sneaky good on ovals, and I think a lot of the time he hasn't necessarily had the means to show that because of the package he's had underneath him. But Andretti have clearly made a decent step forward on short ovals this year, and it's a funny one. Like, I feel like in qualifying there's still a bit of inconsistency there, because I mean, Power qualified, or he started down in 14th. You had Ericsson starting 10th, which it's not awful. Like, it's not as bad as we've seen at certain points from that team. And then you've got Kirkwood on pole. Like, there's not complete consistency, but they are now properly in the fight on short ovals, where it felt like I mean, they were really let down at the back end of last year by their oval package. That was part of the reason why Kirkwood kind of really lost touch in the championship fight. And I mean, I guess talking of the championship fight, like as I mentioned earlier, it's very. He must be pretty frustrated really with how things panned out. I mean, ultimately, it's the nature of how things work on ovals, isn't it? But yeah, he got unlucky here, and I mean, I guess just looking wider at Andretti as well. I mean, Ericsson on that third restart vaulted himself up to second, and then I think Newgarden passing him back kind of just made him lose a bit of momentum, so he ends up finishing down his sixth. Power had a bit of wall contact as well, so he ended up actually finishing 16 laps down, which was unfortunate for him. Another mistake from Power in this season of seasons for him. But I think Andretti would be encouraged, and this was a good showing by Kirkwood. Again, just more evidence, I think, for us that he's becoming just a complete force. And if everything aligns, he's definitely a driver who, I mean, he's clearly a driver who can contend for championships. But I think sooner rather than later, if just more things start going awry for Palou, then he can certainly be there. Not saying in the running this year, but looking in the next few years, like I have all confidence that he will be a champion, and one year he will manage to topple Palou somehow.
Palou's long gone, living in the Barcelona beach, sipping tequila or whatever. I think that's when Kirkwood wins his championship. It's funny, like, how many drivers will never get a championship because of Álex Palou? Like Scott McLaughlin, Pato O'Rourke, possibly Carl Kirkwood. I think David Malukas is a bit too young where he can probably claim one at some point. But there's a lot of drivers who probably good enough to be champions who just never will be because Palou will just win it year on year on year on year. Let's look at the other driver, or the final driver, who's kind of in the mix for top 5 and the top 3 until that final caution really shook the order up, which was Rinus VeeKay. And you mentioned Kirkwood being sneaky good in ovals. VeeKay's definitely sneaky good in ovals, but I feel like people are recognising how kind of competent him and Juncos are on ovals, where they genuinely bring a competitive package to pretty much every oval race. Like, I mean, every oval race of the year we've seen him have a competitive package. Well, Phoenix was also a bit different. He was running in a good spot until he had that incident with Palou, but I wouldn't have a doubt that he would have been competing there as well. And just another good run. Like, Juncos have really unlocked something on ovals. I think a lot of that is the work that Conor Daly did that team the last couple of years. But Rinus VeeKay is really proving himself on ovals as well. There's a very competent oval driver, and he kind of just awaits to stand out over a result. I think like his racecraft is pretty good. It's quite notable every oval race he is competing with top guys. He just hasn't had that notable result, whether that's through luck or whatever. And this was one of them. Like, obviously, kind of got unfortunate at the yellow, so many people did at the end there, which really cost him. But I think another all-round really complete oval performance. And again, it's such a good time to do it, considering that teams will be looking at who they employ for 2026. And if you're looking at somebody who could do the job on ovals, is competitive for road courses and street courses, he's absolutely a guy to consider. He's now moved up to 10th in the championship, and a Juncos car, which a few years ago he's never said the top 10 in the championship would be possible. And shame there is no result. He finished 12th in the end after not really being able to make progress into that final yellow. But like, when you need to look at a driver 2026 potentially, I'm sure Juncos would love to keep him, but if any top teams are looking, like, that could be one of your guys.
Yeah, I think he was probably nailed on for a top 5 here until he got hosed. Maybe even a podium. I don't think he quite had the pace to keep up with the Penske's necessarily, but he was looking at finishing around 5th again, which, I mean, he's on a hell of a run at the moment. And yeah, I mean, 12th place finish is absolutely unrepresentative from this weekend, but yeah, 10th in the standings for Juncos, who have never managed to break the top 15 in points, it's remarkable stuff, really. And I think this was, while, Aaron McLaren had a pretty poor weekend and their package did not look competitive, but while Lundgaard was kind of poosling around at the back of the field, to have VeeKay fighting for one of the Series 2 smallest teams up at the front of the field, I don't know. I wonder whether Chip Ganassi Racing will be watching that, because it's not like VeeKay has been nowhere on road and street courses as well. As we've spoken about a lot, like, he's been a proper maximizer, even on road and street courses where Juncos have had a very inconsistent package at best. They've had the occasional good weekend. They've had weekends where they've been very far off the pace, and VeeKay still managed to salvage something of a result. So, yeah, this is some achievement to be where he is in points with 6 races remaining, including 2 more ovals, where, as you say, Juncos have really kind of unlocked something. I mean, Stingray Rob was actually in the top 10 at one point in this race as well, ends up finishing 15th. But DK just continues to put the paddock very, very much on notice.
Mick Schumacher is one who is also worth touching on, because we said quite a lot about him following our mid-Ohio review, just about how we need to really see a step up in performance. And we absolutely saw it at Nashville, which is quite unexpected, considering an oval was the last place we thought he'd have a strong run, considering just RL's general package on ovals and given his experience. But he looked really comfortable throughout the weekend. He qualified 16th, which isn't superb, but it's better than he's been qualifying on a lot of the road courses. And kind of when others fell off around him, he was just pretty much there in contention the entire time. And obviously he was one who got saved by the yellow. But even before then, I say saved by the yellow, even before then, he was running kind of in and around the top 10 completely on merit. Like it was a very good performance. Finished 8th in the end. But what impressed me was come the racecraft that he displayed. Like he wasn't comfortable to go by side. He wasn't afraid to use different lines. And it's a really important result at such an important time when kind of his future looks a little bit in doubt, whether at the team, whether he moves to somebody else, whatever. So a big result at a big time. And it's good to see Schumacher kind of have this confidence on ovals. And I feel like we've seen this a couple of times where actually drivers from Europe interestingly performed really well on ovals. Like Robert Schwartzman was one last year. He didn't really seem as competitive on road and street courses, but seemed to be even in the top 10 on several ovals, which might be the case of Schumacher as well this season. Obviously, Phoenix qualified 4th. Yes, that didn't quite go as planned on race day, but it's becoming a bit of a trend now where Schumacher's kind of showing more on ovals than he is on the road and street courses. So I think that's just a real confidence boost kind of heading into the last couple of rounds of the season, that actually he has got the capability to race with some of the best guys out there. And it's not like, you know, he had massive fall off at some points or really struggled with tyres or whatever. He was also notably the lead RLL car for all the weekend. Graham Rahal had an absolute shocker, as he might get onto a little bit later, and Louis Foster was a little bit nowhere. But Schumacher was really leading that team forward and seemed incredibly comfortable, considering it's his first time in Nashville and what is only 4th oval race.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a fast learner because it's a completely alien craft. And I remember Phoenix, when obviously he started up in 4th. I mean, he came away from that race, I think, pretty puzzled just by the whole art of oval racing. And yeah, I think Indianapolis was a bit tough as well. But this was the most comfortable I think we've seen him in any race, really. Like he had strong pace. He was able to make moves. It wasn't like he was on the defensive the entire time. You know, we were hearing bits of radio where he was kind of seemed pretty sure in terms of the adjustments he was making. So yeah, really impressive weekend, and he really needed this because it has been a rough year, obviously. I mean, his best result before this, I think, was 16th, was it not? So this is a massive step forward. Not just the first top 10, but the first top 15 as well. So it is hopefully a bit of a springboard, hopefully a bit of a proving ground as well, because there are all these reports this week that RLM might cut that 3rd car and sell a charter to Brian Reinbold Racing. So, that puts Schumacher kind of in the hot seat, and he needs to prove to teams that he is worth buying into and, obviously being given a second year. And he is someone who tends to improve in a second season. I know it wasn't hard when he was in F1 because Haas in his first year in 2021 basically just did not do anything to their car, and obviously came into the new regulations in 22, and he was always bound to improve, but he did make a big step forward between 21 and 22. So yeah, I think that's just one to watch, really. Like you obviously mentioned, he was top of that team. I mean, this was just kind of the same story we've seen from Rahal now for several years. I mean, in opening practice, he was 9 miles per hour off the quickest time. I mean, it was an incredible deficit, and he was denied even qualifying because of a fuel pressure issue. And then, for much of the early parts of the final practice session on Saturday evening, I think he was 13 miles per hour off the next car in last, because he was kind of battling an issue, like a mysterious issue. Like he knew there was a problem with his car, but they couldn't find what it was. So he comes into the pits, they can't figure out what it was, he goes back out, and then he pretty much immediately crashes. And I think they actually found that there was a failure to the right rear upright, which would make sense because Rahal was saying the car was even loose on the straights. But yeah, we had a very animated Graham Rahal weekend here, and I mean, even in the race, he was about to be lapped after 20 laps before Collette crashed, and then it was only 20 more laps after that caution before he was about to be lapped again. So this was Graham Rahal in his kind of moving chicane mode, as you like to call it, Dan.
I'm a bit bemused. Like, how has this been going on for so long? Yes, I appreciate he had those issues in practice, which left him a little bit helpless. But how many times have we said Rahal is just so slow on ovals? And every year, we've got new oval guys. This year was Gavin Ward, who's going to fix our oval issues, and nobody fixes their oval issues. And he's the only one who has these problems. Yes, there might be cases where Foster is slow, for example, but Rahal's the only one who is this far off the pace. He's genuinely kind of a bit of a hazard for other people to get around. And
like, that genuinely is true. Like, cars were getting completely freight trained because they were encountering Rahal in a race where it was pretty tough to get around even lapped cars, but there were genuinely times where cars were being packed together because he was so slow on track.
Yeah, and I don't understand how it's just him in this team and this issue's been going on for so long. Like, and every year is a reset to try and solve this issue, and it never fixes it. There's got to be something deeper in here, which is the root of this issue, because I don't understand how not every oval, but Phoenix, who's obviously finishing in the top 10, but we see this at least once or twice a year where he is just so uncompetitive that it's frankly embarrassing, and it's only him in that team. And like, at what point does he have to take a little bit of accountability for this issue? Like, Schumacher's running in the top 10 fairly comfortably. Foster's not quick, but at least he's not being lapped every 10 minutes on your TV. Like, what's going on?
I mean, Foster actually did have a pretty good race. He was running around Schumacher, and then I think he got a penalty for contact with Lundgaard in pit lane. Maybe he had to do a drive-through, so that kind of ruined his race. But yeah, just on Rahal, like, I think the instances like Phoenix this year or like Iowa last year, where he's genuinely competitive, make this like all the more puzzling. I just get the impression they don't know what the hell's going on. Like, if they're good, do they know why they're good? And when they're bad, they don't appear to know why they're bad because they're not improving in a lot of cases. So yeah, utterly puzzling. And it's been years and years that we've been in this position now, and still just kind of here in its Groundhog Day.
But how can you be so far off? That's what I don't get. How can you be so far off the pace? It's like, it's not like they're a couple of miles an hour slower than people. They're the only car who is lapping 5 to 10 miles an hour slower than everybody else. Like, baffling. Yeah, I'd be interested to find out one day what's really going on, because I don't understand how he can be that uncompetitive compared to every other. Like, no other car or team has this issue, and whatever they do every single year, new chassis, new team, new personnel, does nothing. Something's got to change. Something's got to be the root cause of this issue. Is it him? I don't know. Okay, let's go over the running order. So Palou, Newgarden, and Malukas was podium with Goxon in fourth. A quiet but good run for Felix Rosenqvist from 17th to 5th. I think he was one who got pretty fortunate at that final caution, hence made up a lot of spots. And Marcus Ericsson in 6th. He had a pretty competitive day once again. A strong, the best finishing Andretti on an oval. Obviously ran a well at Gateway. Looks like his future of the team looks a bit more comfortable now, which is surprising given the start of the season. The whole storyline was, when is Ericsson going to go? But he's still holding on, and he's having a good stretch of races. Like, this is an incomparable Ericsson to the Ericsson that we saw 12 months ago. And I wouldn't say he's consistent, but the results are coming a lot more often than they were previously. And he looks competitive in comparison to Kirkwood and Powell, which is kind of all that Andretti can really ask for. Award 7th, it was an awful weekend for McLaren, to be completely honest. They were, well, by far and away the quickest team last year. Awarded a dominant pole position. He should have won. Lundgaard was in the top 5 around a mechanical failure. This felt like a track they had locked down. Award was second the year before, and he could have won that race as well. And this year, absolutely nowhere. Like, Award qualified 12th, Lundgaard was 24th. Lundgaard was really slow. Siegel was 13th. And in the race, they were absolutely nowhere. Siegel was the best McLaren for much of the day. Award was pretty much in 15th for the entire race and locked out on the final caution to get 7th. It was a baffling day for McLaren, and you never know at what track they're going to turn up and be quick. And the tracks you think they're going to be turned up and not be very quick, they're quick. And the tracks you expect them to be quick, they're not quick. I don't understand how you can lose so much performance in 12 months. Like, last year, they were by far and away the quickest team, like, and it wasn't even close. And this year, it's not like it was the conditions on the race day. The whole weekend, they just weren't quick. Like, baffling. Again, like it's like rail levels of baffling. Like, just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, Award dominated on race day last year before he had his tyre failure. So this was confusing. And this is the issue I keep outlining with Aaron McLaren. It's kind of they have such a high ceiling, but they've kind of, I mean, it wasn't something we really saw as much last year, but this year their floor has become really quite low again. Like, I thought last year we'd really seen foundations laid whereby they were just going to be, the worst they were going to be was solid. And then they've also got their real high level. And we've seen that high level maintained, obviously, with, I mean, the recent run that they've been on. But this is a real crash back down to earth of kind of the Aaron McLaren of pre-2025, where there's just massive peaks and troughs, and they're pretty streaky as a team. And yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a worry. And I think this is where they hope that, you know, you can get the experienced heads of Dixon and Rosenqvist coming in and you can fix some of this inconsistency, because it is plaguing them, because they can't afford weekends like this. I mean, yeah, it's just puzzling again. Like, I mean, I feel like puzzling is a word we use a lot with them. I think when Lundgaard won at Road America, we said it was puzzling, or he said it was puzzling and confusing. So yeah, for Siegel to be the quickest guy, like, another encouraging sign for his improvement. I think this kind of bit of a better run that he's on, but also a bit of a concern for Award that he's trailing his pretty inexperienced teammate who's being dropped for performance issues.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say. It's just disappointing. I mean, Lundgaard, I'd be very worried. Like, he's got to find a seat for next year, and the whole reason they've dropped him was ovals. And suddenly you look at a performance like that, and you're like, oh, actually,
something must have been wrong there, because that was, I mean, he was ridiculously. So I know he had an engine penalty, but I mean, he pretty much qualified at the back.
And my point is, if you're a top team and you're looking for a Christian Lundgaard, and you know you need to find a guy who's good in ovals, McLaren's point of actually he's not very good in ovals, which is costing us, doesn't look very good, is it? Their point looks correct.
Like, you know, he's not been outstanding on ovals, but he's been okay on ovals, which isn't obviously the standard when you're a team that tends to not.
This is in general. This weekend he was worse than okay.
I think this was anomalous. Like, I think he's decent on ovals. I don't want to make out like because they've dropped him for ovals he's really bad. He's just not a front runner. This weekend was anomalous. Something's gone on this weekend, because this wasn't right. They're like, we're used to at least seeing him in, you know, on a bad weekend in the mid-teens. Like, he was something just went very badly wrong here. I mean, I remember in the final practice session he was having problems. I mean, he was really slow in final practice as well. Like,
but like in the race he wasn't any good either. Like, he was being lapped pretty quickly. I mean, he ended up with the lead lap, so he got his lap back at some point, but. He did have a penalty seemingly actually for emergency service in a closed pit, it looks like. But that was a restart at the back of the field. He probably was at the back of the field anyway. So not a great run. And I don't think his other open performances justify him getting a good seat based on his oval performances.
For sure.
Like, he's not a top 10 guy on ovals in a team that are usually a top 10 team on ovals.
No. Absolutely not. But something's gone dramatically wrong this weekend, because this was nearly Rahal levels of bad at points.
Oh, that's a bit unfair.
Rahal levels of bad on a good weekend.
Yeah, maybe. Kevin Simpson was a pretty good run actually for him. Kevin Simpson, pretty quiet one though. Kirkwood was 10th, Siegel was 11th, VK ends up 12th. Ferrucci was 13th. He was actually one who got quite unlucky, because he was running quite comfortably in the top 10 for most of
one of his best races of the season. I mean, he's another one who seems to be in the hot seat. Really, he needs to really book up his ideas. Feels a bit harsh, but he needs to really find a bit of an upturn, because it's been just not a season that I think would warrant that team keeping him. Really, he's still some way off the form that we saw from 2 years ago when he finished 9th in points. So this was a better day, ultimately, with nothing to show for it.
Grosjean 14th ahead of Robin 15th. Lundgaard last car lead lap in 16th. Foster ended up 17th after the penalty you mentioned. Then we kind of get on to the people who had issues. So Dixon ended up 18th, only 7 laps down, which is pretty remarkable considering the crash he had of Alexander Rossi. Now, I'm sure you've all seen it, but Rossi was going to the pits and he says Dixon misjudged it. From what I can see, I think Rossi's just entering the pits from a pretty weird angle. Usually you go off turn 2, you go pretty low, and that's an indication of you going into the pits. He was kind of half a lane up by the time he was dropping down, and you look at Dixon's onboard. What else is he supposed to do?
Yeah, I saw nothing from Dixon's onboard, and we are not race car drivers, but I would also trust Dixon's judgment. I saw nothing from Rossi's onboard to suggest that he had clearly indicated he was coming into the pits. I mean, he just slowed very dramatically. Like, Dixon looked like he was simply just kind of in his toe, and I mean, it was a pretty scary crash. Like, Dixon has hit a car that has slowed so suddenly that we kind of thought he'd just had some sort of engine issue or something. And the fact that Dixon could 7 laps later be back out on track after at full speed hitting a car that had just completely stopped was pretty remarkable. I mean, again, it's just credit to how robust the car is that, all he was left with was a mangled front wing, which somehow took all of the impact. Like, maybe there was some other damage, but the fact he could kind of continue in the race was incredible. And yeah, I mean, this is the first crash Rossi's had since his injury. He's actually walking now, so he could actually just get out of the car and walk away. So that's something to note from his weekend. But yeah, he was all right, which was good. I guess that's the fear when you have a bit of an impact like that after an injury. So that was
a great weekend for Dixon again. It feels like he's a bit anonymous for a lot of races.
He qualified well.
Yes, you're right. He qualified well. We didn't race.
No,
he dropped quite a lot in the opening stint.
Yeah,
so,
he did.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel like Ganassi have had a superb oval package this year, particularly. Like, as we said with Palou, like, I don't think he won with the fastest car this weekend. So yeah, but it was just a tough weekend. It's turning into just a wretched season for Dixon.
He's outside the top 10 in points. He hasn't had a top 10 since the Indy GP, by the way.
Yeah, it's been a real wretched
very
one.
Scott Dixon-esque.
Yeah, 6 races to end this legendary collaboration on a high, and I hope he does, really, because I don't want it to just peter out in this way.
Rahal parked early, so he finished in 19th. Power finished in 20th. Another messy weekend for Power, as you mentioned earlier. Really didn't have the pace of his teammates throughout, and then just had a bit of a bad race day and ended up with him hitting the wall, which cost him 16 laps in the end there. Dennis Hauger was 21st. He caused the yellow, which kind of caused that massive strategy difference late on, which saw some people get really lucky, some people get really unlucky. Rough run for Hauger, actually. You really did not have a good Mid-Ohio weekend at all. He hasn't finished in the top 20 since Detroit, hasn't finished in the top 10 since the Indy GP. His pretty sizable lead at one point in the Rookie of the Year standings is going pretty quickly. The one caveat to that is Kai Collette also had a pretty bad weekend and crashed very early on, which meant that his points he was probably extended, if anything. So I guess maybe not too bad. But yeah, it's just been not a very good run of races for Dennis Hauger. And suddenly he's won again. His future looks uncertain. Andretti sound like they're not going to pay for a seat at Coyne, and it doesn't sound as if he's close to getting an Andretti promotion. So yeah, just rough run of races at a bad time for Dennis Hauger.
I do just want to briefly touch on Hauger, because I think the narrative has very much grown that Collette is this like budding superstar. And okay, Hauger has been on a very bad run, but he still leads Romain Grosjean in the standings, who is a vastly experienced driver, who is his teammate. And I mean, I just think Dale Coyne Racing have regressed massively since losing VK last year, really. Like, I don't know whether that is a reflection on how good VK was as kind of a leader at that team or not, but they've had a bad season. And I think you've still got to really give Hauger credit for the fact that he is leading Grosjean in the standings. And as much as everyone is kind of making out like he's having a disastrous year, and okay, he is having a pretty disastrous run, he is still ahead of this guy who everyone is talking about. So I think people just need to calm down a little bit.
People forget St. Pete pretty quickly, right? Like, yeah, a great weekend at St. Petersburg.
Exactly.
It's the first race of the season. It's like,
yeah, exactly. And I think Coyne have taken a bit of a step back as the season's gone on. But just, I think everyone needs to just chill out a bit and stop making out like, Collette, this isn't to do a downer on Collette at all. It's more just to say, like, just stop forgetting about Hauger and acting like he's having a bad year.
Collette hasn't had a top 10 finish. Like, yes, Gateway, Road America, Mid-Ohio was a good run performance-wise, but it's like, Collette isn't executing these races. Sure, he's getting unlucky on occasion, and yes, Hauger's having a great run. But you're right, the narrative is very much Collette's this great rookie. He's going to get the big move, and I don't think Collette's shown loads more than Hauger. Like the first half of the year, I think we forget Collette was taking a while to get up to speed, kind of prior to Indianapolis.
I guess like it is he's followed him on natural trajectory, Collette, in that he's had the kind of slow start that's natural of a rookie and improved, and Hauger's kind of gone the opposite way, where he's flown out the box and then regressed a little bit. And I guess Hauger comes in with higher expectations as the pretty dominant Indy Next champion as well. But
he's also in a team who you would say have not performed to the same
level.
Exactly.
Collette's in a team where I have a technical alliance with Team Penske. So, yeah, just, I mean, it's one to watch over these final few races, but I think the whole narrative has just been well overblown that, you know, okay, Collette is showing a lot of promise, but as part of that, I don't think we need to do down the fact that Hauger's supposedly had a bad year, because, you know, he's still inside the leaders' circle. He's leading his experienced teammate, and he's leading Rookie of the Year. Come on.
Next up was Christian Rasmussen. I don't want to say this, but I'm kind of glad he's had a crash in an oval now, so he can stop this whole like mantra. Say, like, admittedly, he was on the edge, but not refreshing, but him being on the edge and crashing kind of felt a little bit human. It wasn't like the Rasmussen that we would not stop talking about for like 3 weeks. He was loose, and that incident was definitely coming on this occasion. Yeah. And
I mean, he can control a loose car, but this was like evilly loose this weekend.
Yeah. But he qualified well. Like it was his best qualifying on oval, I believe, in 7th, and he was running kind of in and around the top 10, and he was having a few moments, a few brown pants, but probably not brown pants moments for Rasmussen. They're just his normal driving style, really. But yeah, kind of went one step too far. That incident has been coming for a long time. Nashville, he had that crash last year in the opening lap as well. So not a great place, Nashville, for Rasmussen. But yeah, I'm kind of just glad we've got it out of the way. I've also heard somewhere that he doesn't really like the nicknames that Fox keep on giving him. So I wish he'd stop that, because I think they're awful as well. It's like the Salt in a sketch. Like, oh, just Granger. Yeah, no, not a fan. But yeah, that incident was overdue, and it finally came. Rossi was 23rd after his collision with Dixon. Armstrong was 24th. He had a mechanical failure. And then Collette crashed very early on in a very similar crash to what we had at the 500.
Ed Carpenter Racing, by the way, are not having a good season. I know obviously Rasmussen had his one standout oval drive, but I mean, Rossi's been on a terrible run. He's only 16th in points, and Rasmussen's still down in 22nd. I mean, they're just not getting over the line. It's another double DNF. And this was a year where we're supposed to see a lot of progress from that team in the second year with the big investment. And, you know, we've seen decent levels of performance, but I don't think we've seen anything that's been a marked step forward. And they just are not getting over the line. Simple as that. Rasmussen
22nd in points as well. Like he's behind Hauger, who's having a disaster season, and yet Rasmussen's having a great year.
Funny. I'm not sure I'd go that far.
Well, no, I know I'm not, but that's the narrative that people will like. Rasmussen's this guy who, you know, is one of the best in the series, and it's like he's 22nd in points. He's also failed to finish the same amount of races as he's actually finished. I appreciate some of them were mechanical, quite a lot of them were mechanical, but the fact he's seen the checker flag the same amount of times as he hasn't is a bit worrying. How many of them were crashes? Detroit was a crash. Nashville was a crash. Arlington was a mechanical. GP was a mechanical. 500 was a mechanical. And Road America was... I can't remember what happened to Road America. Something happened to him at Road America. Yes, he had a mechanical because he pulled up next to the pit lane, and that
they've had a lot of mechanicals.
Yeah, which I think we mentioned after that episode why you have so many. But yeah, I mean, even Rossi's got 3 retirements this year, so not great. Okay, top 3 drivers of the weekend. I feel this is really hard because
I've been mulling over this and I have come to a conclusion.
Okay, because Malukas is the one here where the crash was his fault, and that is the reason why he qualified last. But he still did finish 3rd considering the circumstances. But how much you take them into account because it was his own?
Well,
I'm interested to hear yours.
Malukas is my number 1.
What, really?
Yeah, I think his performance was exceptional. My 3 is Malukas, McLaughlin, Kirkwood.
No Palou. No, neither of the top two.
No,
reached the
I
top
think
three.
just because if everything had been ordinary in that race, I think the way in which it would have shaken out would probably have been Palou finishing 4th, Newgarden 5th, or vice versa.
Interesting.
That's just like I just think McLaughlin and Kirkwood were the strongest two cars out there. They proved that before the race kind of went a bit messy, and then Malukas' performance was just, I mean, it was exceptional. It was one of the most gutsy and I think impressive drives we've seen in a long time.
I'm going to hold more weight to the fact Malukas caused his own problem, because I feel like had he not, again, this is all very hypothetical, but if he qualifies at the start, at the front, I guess he had a penalty, so maybe it's hard to say. I don't know. I'm going to go McLaughlin, Malukas, Palou.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to. I feel like Kirkwood for me didn't get through the field well enough in the final stint to warrant him getting a top grade. Newgarden's close. Newgarden's close to Palou, but
I mean, any of those 5 would. Yeah,
for me, Kirkwood didn't make enough progress in the final stint for me to say he had a great weekend. He had a good weekend, but I wouldn't say he was one of the best, considering that he finished 10th and McLaughlin was behind him, or well, he's one position ahead of him and finished 4th. So,
yeah, but ultimately he had a good car for being up front,
but you have to have a good car on traffic, because that's the way these over races work. You go back and forth. Well, you've got to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I do, to be fair, think Malukas and McLaughlin had exceptional cars that were probably quite a bit better than anyone else.
Yeah, I agree. Unsung hero. Quite a lot. Well, maybe not a lot. Some.
BK. He goes back from.
You think he's unsung? I would argue he wasn't.
I think he probably is. Just because of where he's finished in the end. Like, I think people would have probably been singing his praises if he finished 5th, and he kind of gets forgotten about a bit. So he's been demoted from the top 3 drivers to unsung again.
Well, I think Ferrucci's kind of in that mix as well. He probably would have had a good result. But like Simpson again, he's won, but I think he got fortunate at the last yellow.
Yeah,
Ericsson has won. Maybe Rosenquist went from 17th to 5th and don't really talk about it. So maybe Rosenquist.
I'm not really sure how it happened. I think it must have been something on strategy, because he doesn't just go from kind of in the teams.
He was running 7th before the yellow.
Okay.
So
yeah, good showing on an over. I did at one point think he might win the race, to be honest.
What point did you think that?
I mean, he restarted. Where did he? Did he restart 3rd? I thought he was in the mix there. If he had a good restart, but I mean, no Rosenquist and restarts. Any
funny moments?
I've only got one, really, because I think actually the weekend just ended up being a bit sad for the way it kind of unraveled a little bit. But Malukas in the post-race press conference saying that he carried along with him a baby Jesus that he'd been given by a fan and a pink rubber ducky that he'd been given by a fan. He had them with him in the car as kind of lucky charms, which I found just
and a US
very amusing.
Coin.
And a US coin. Yeah, but that's just nice and cool. That's not.
I know, but that's worth a mention to all the servicemen out there.
For sure. But the baby Jesus and pink rubber ducky toys were quite interesting.
I would also say I saw this one clip of Louis Foster doing like a Sunday report in the rain, and he was literally absolutely like drenched in water and having a very British sarcastic tone to what was going on, which I quite enjoy. Earlier this week, we caught up with Marcus Armstrong of Marshak Racing. Obviously, he signed a new deal with the team a couple of weeks ago. So we kind of asked him as to why he signed that new deal, as well as if he was considered for the Ganassi seat, considering he was one a lot of people were putting in the hat to replace Scott Dixon, and whether he thought there was an opportunity there for him to move to the senior team as such in Ganassi. Cheers, Dave. Hi, Marcus. I hope you're doing well. Obviously, as Dave mentioned, you signed a new contract with Marshak Racing the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to get your thoughts as to why you signed a new deal with the team, especially considering there are so many seats up for grabs next season.
Why I signed it? Well, it's a fantastic team, and that's obviously where I've been for the last 2 years, and I'm very, very happy with where I am and the situation that I've found myself in. And of course, I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Like, there's no doubt about it. And we have all the ingredients to go out there and win. We have shown that. And even if you look at the statistics this year, I feel like we've had a strong car on every single every single circuit, really, maybe apart from Mid-Ohio, frankly. But, the 500, Felix won it and I was fifth. So I feel like as a unit, as a team, we're in a strong position, and like I said, we're only getting better. We've got a young engineering core. My engineers, frankly, are not much older than I am, so we're all getting better together, and it's going to be fun.
And I guess, given the fact you have the alliance with Chip Ganassi Racing, once Scott was announced to leave, that you were a driver who maybe were considering in that seat. So, would you say that was a seat you were kind of ever interested in moving to? And did you feel like maybe there was an opportunity or Chip was looking for you as one of the drivers for that seat?
Well, obviously, I've driven for both teams. I've driven for Chip, and so obviously there was a line of communication, but ultimately Chip calls the shots, and but ultimately very, very happy where I am. Like this, that's the point.
Cool. Cheers, Marcus. Go well this weekend. Cheers, Dave.
Just before we finish, I think it does bear a bit more of an in-depth reflection on just the loss of the lead-in from the World Cup final on Sunday. Obviously, I kind of just come away from it pretty gutted for IndyCar and for Fox, because this was supposed to be a pretty special weekend, I think, for IndyCar, with such a big opportunity to have possibly millions of people coming from the World Cup final and kind of having their eyes immediately on pretty much the drop of the green flag in Nashville. And they took a swing in moving what was the best race last year from the finale slot, which it felt really perfect in, to this slot purely for this purpose. And I think I might have used this wording at the top, that it was just a bit of a master plan. So to lose that to, essentially the uncontrollable factor of weather, it's just so disappointing. Like, I know maybe you could say like it's a risk, putting kind of all your eggs in this basket just because of how the Midwest weather and storms bubbling up can be. But I don't think anyone's really to blame here. Like, it was worth the risk. It was worth taking the chance, because this was such a rare opportunity to get such a huge dose of new eyeballs on the sport. And it just felt like it could have been a really big breakthrough. And ultimately it fell deflatingly flat. And like, even when we felt we had the consolation of, okay, we're going to lose the eyeballs, we might have a night race, that didn't come to pass. And yeah, then it obviously just was a kick in the teeth to have it moved to Monday. And it just felt like all of the special sauce that this weekend was supposed to have, including obviously a 300 lap, nearly 400 mile race, was all just lost. So it was a tough one, really. It was a tough one to take, because it felt like this was going to be a real showcase of IndyCar, and it ended up being none of that particularly.
I mean, yeah, you're not going to get an opportunity like this anytime soon, really, are you? A World Cup on US soil, where the US viewership of the World Cup has been very good, and fair play to Fox, who tried to delay the post-race as much as they can just to give IndyCar a window. And I'm very intrigued to see what the pre-race viewership figures will be, because it'll probably be the highest pre-race viewership figures like we've ever seen in our lives. But
I do though fear that obviously they halted for so long after the World Cup final, and to be fair, I mean, there was a lot of faff in kind of the post-match trophy ceremony and everything, but I think they probably halted so much, like it was another half hour, like at least, after the trophy ceremonies before Fox went on air. I think they will have lost most people anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll find out ultimately, and probably today or Wednesday is when we'll find out what the viewership figure is. But yeah, as I said, this was a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity for Fox to really bring in a huge audience to watch IndyCar, and again, through really no fault of their own, they lost it. And yes, as you say, the argument is, well, because you put it on a road course and you didn't have that problem, but the spectacle on road courses just hasn't been great in the last couple of years. And if you're trying to attract new fans to the series, you would have said, okay, outside the Indy 500, Nashville is your number one race where you can really showcase an exciting product. And then the flip side of that is, once it goes to Monday, all the high line work gets erased. I was saying this to you, could they run a high line practice on Monday morning? I guess it didn't have the tyres or the time to do so, but it meant we basically had a single groove race for the whole thing, which was, again, equally a shame, where the racing product went, the viewership went. There wasn't very many fans in the stands, which was a whole palaver that we probably won't get into, but some fans looked like they've had to pay full price, while some have only paid a tenner. And yeah, those few balls are gone. The racing wasn't as good, and the kind of opportunity to race under the lights, which would have been really cool, especially at a track like Nashville, has gone. So you've kind of lost 3 or 4 USPs there in one blow. And yeah, there's not much Fox could have really done. As I said, put a road course in there, but if the product's not very good, will people want to stick around and watch it? So it's a shame. But you can't really begrudge anybody. It was a good idea. You can absolutely see why they did it, and it's a shame ultimately that we won't get an oval as the season finale now, especially after this just didn't go to plan. But credit to Fox for trying everything they could, and just a shame that it didn't happen, because it was such a great opportunity, and the viewership figures were very interesting because people are going to be at work and wouldn't have been able to watch the race kind of over in America. So yeah, I mean, all we can say is just a huge shame, and not much else could be done. It was a great idea, and credit to Fox for coming up with these innovative ideas to bring eyeballs to the series. But Mother Nature had a say.
I know people have criticised the race being run, 2:00 track time on Monday. I think possibly you could have run it earlier, try to still get the full race distance in. Maybe that's an alternative. Ultimately, it would have been cool if, even if it meant being on FS1, if they could maybe just do an evening race. That would have been cool. But then you don't want to run the risk of, having to battle rain and losing it again. But I also don't think that was feasible, because teams have got to get all the way to Portland for testing. So, they're on pretty thin ice in terms of the amount of time, and I think they just had to run it. They couldn't have delayed it again to, make it a night race on Monday to kind of recreate that, and ultimately needs must. I think just finally, I want to give Fox a little bit of credit for the manner in which they still handled the broadcast on Sunday when they were thrown over from the World Cup final, because I thought they did a good job for any stragglers that were remaining of kind of still introducing them to IndyCar without obviously having the race to do so. First thing they did is show how diverse the range of drivers is, and did some questionable comparisons between
that should be a funny moment.
Football players.
Rasmussen and Harden in comparison. That was not quite
that was something. I liked immediately they took Álex Palou, interviewed him, compared this dominant Spaniard to Spain just having won the World Cup. That was nice. They showed Rosenqvist, they showed the Indy 500 finish, they interviewed him, they interviewed a whole host of drivers. They didn't just come on for 10 minutes and say, watch your screen, watch for updates, and we'll come back on when the race is going to start, or not, as it proved. They just filled for the best part of a couple of hours, really. And I think there were signs there that it was going to be a really well suited broadcast to a new audience, in that they were kind of not over explaining stuff in a patronizing way, but they were kind of introducing people to IndyCar in a way that was geared to the layman, also wouldn't have turned off all of your kind of hardened fans. So I really liked kind of what they were building towards, and I'm just really disappointed for everyone that clearly so much hard work that went into planning for this and making it as great as it possibly could be just came to absolutely no fruition and fell entirely flat on its face.
And then the racing wasn't the same
and
standards
the
of
racing
in other years.
Exactly, because of everything that went down on the Sunday. So it's just a big sigh, really. It's very
crush of the weekend.
Very unlucky.
Most IndyCar thing to happen to IndyCar, really. What a shame.
Great shame.
I wonder what they're going to do next season. They seem really keen to keep Laguna as a season finale, but obviously the reason they moved this was because of the World Cup impact. So do they move it back to the season finale? I hope they do, because I thought it was a great season finale. But they kind of keep it in the summer stretch. Be interesting to see what they do. I hope they move it back to the finale, but who knows? They're keen on Laguna Seca for whatever reason, despite nobody really turning up and the racing being pretty average. We'll find out. And hopefully, next year with the High Line back, it'll be a little bit better. Even with the other rate of the hybrid, ovals weren't really affected. It's just when you don't we've seen this for years. When you don't have a High Line, it's just the racing isn't very good. And these High Line sessions the series put on that always seem to really work well. But once they got rained out, there was no opportunity. And you could see people trying on restarts, but there was that restart that Power did, and he tried to go on the High Line, and he just ballooned it into the wall. So not much you could do. Right, let's go on to our predicted tournaments before we end off. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. It's very close to top of the podium predicted tournament. So this is going to be very intriguing as we kind of head to the business end of the season. So it was close. It was a very high-scoring week in the podium predicted one. Everyone predicted Newgarden as one of their three, and I think everybody else either put Palou or Malukas as one of their other drivers. So a lot of good scores this week. So we start off with the lowers, which are just the 3 points, which was Will Buxton with Newgarden, O'Ward, and Palou. 2 for Newgarden, 1 for Palou, and the writers went for Newgarden, Kirkwood, Palou. So just a different driver in the middle. Then we go on to your 4 pointers, who was yourself and James Archie with Newgarden, Palou, and Kirkwood. Obviously, 2 points apiece from Newgarden and Palou. And then myself and Tom Gamer went for the same with Newgarden, O'Ward, and Malukas. So 3 points for Malukas being bang on, and 2 points for Newgarden being one off. And then the fans went for O'Ward, Newgarden, and Malukas. So 6 points there for the fans of Newgarden and Malukas correct. So the standings are intriguing. Like, there's no IndyCar championship battle there. There's certainly a championship battle on here. So the writers are on 29. They're kind of out of it at this point. They need a miracle in the last couple of races to recover that. Then we've got Will Buxton, who is quite far behind at 32. He's a long-time leader of this was Will, so he's kind of fallen off a little bit there. Then we have a little bit of a gap up to James, who's got 37, but is still only in 5th place, and then it gets very close. So 3 points ahead of James is yourself and Tom Archie, who are 1 point off the lead, which is myself and the fans. So 4 people all within a point, and we're on 41 points. So very close with 6 races to go. We're 6 races to go. We're 6 races to go, I believe. So
yep, 6 to go.
How many points are up for grabs? There are 45 points up for grabs. No, 54 points up for grabs. We've only achieved 41 in 12 races. You have to open this point forward so that you don't have a bad weekend, because if you do, you might be a bit stuffed. Too little, too late. Let's go on to the Fast 6 predicted tournament. And for the last 18 weeks in a row, I've gained by 1 every time. So we'll see if that happens this weekend. So we didn't go for Triple Penske because you didn't go for Newgarden, did you?
No, I didn't.
Roval case. Damn, that was a bad decision.
Yeah.
Who did you go for in the end?
So I went for Malukas, McLaughlin, Kirkwood, Power, Palou, and O'Ward. So
you got Kirkwood, Palou, and McLaughlin.
Yep.
So I went for Triple Penske. So we've got 2 of them, Palou, O'Ward, and Rosenquist. So 3 apiece this week.
Hey, finally it stalls out.
You haven't lost anything this week.
So the scores are 36-30. I think I nearly put Rossi, which is a shame because I would have gained on you.
Would have been a great guess.
Unfortunate.
Anyway, let's go on to Portland, which is still 3 weeks away, basically. But we're going to do it now anyway. You see, you can't really afford even weeks because we're only 6 races. I say 6 races to go. You only need to gain 1 each week, which I had done for basically 6 weeks in a row.
Do we have bonus points if you get 6 out of 6?
We've discussed this for years, but I always feel like the answers.
I feel like it because it seems to be so difficult. Like a 10-point bonus.
A 10-point bonus? I'd maybe say 10 points overall, but not a 10-point bonus.
How much? Yeah, okay, 10 points overall if you get 6 out of 6. Deal?
Fine. Yeah, let's shake on that. Virtual shake.
Because that's an incentive for me not to just go completely wild and throw it away.
Because, yeah, in 3 years of doing this?
It's never happened.
It's never happened. So, we must have guessed something close to, I don't even know what the maths are here. We've had, probably doing this for 50 races, been at least 2 of us, so probably 125 guesses, and we've never got a 6 correct. So, yeah, right, let's see if we can do it for Portland. We will come back to you with our predictions shortly. Should I go bold to start off with?
Yeah, go for it.
Álex Palou.
Oh, yeah, I've gone for Palou.
Shock horror. When was the last time you haven't put Palou in I want to know the last time I haven't put Palou in a Fast 6.
Have we ever not put Palou in a Fast 6?
Maybe the Indy 500. Maybe the Indy 500 I didn't.
Okay, interesting.
I'll have to find this. On a road course, I don't know the last time I did put Palou in a Fast 6 on a road street course. Probably never.
Okay, I'm going to throw Malukas out there.
Yep, I've got Malukas. I mean, he's kind of a staple at this point, really, isn't he? I feel like.
Absolutely. Lundgaard?
Yep.
Pole sitter last year.
Well, faux pole sitter.
Okay, I'll let you throw out the next one because I'm not sure these next three will all match, to be honest.
Well, Award inherited Lundgaard's pole, and I feel like his qualifying form has generally been pretty good on road courses this year. I think he's been in the top 12 in every qualifying session, so I've got him.
I haven't, just because Aaron McLaren are confusing, and they were great at Portland last year. They were absolutely awful at Portland in 24, so I've gone for Lundgaard just because he's been so strong on road course. I know Award obviously had a really good Mid-Ohio. I'm not put Award. I still feel like I have to be a bit bold here. Because I can't bank on how I'm getting 6 out of 6. Let's be frank. So how about? I mean, you might not have put him Alexander Rossi.
No, definitely not put Alexander Rossi.
Rasmussen qualified well. Mid-Ohio. Rossi qualified pretty well. I think he was 7th at Portland last year. So
I've gone for Scott McLaughlin. Took pole at Portland a couple of years ago, and I just feel like this is a track which Penske go well at.
I haven't. His road course qualifying form has not been brilliant at all. I've gone for Ericsson.
I've gone for his teammate Will Power.
I've gone for Kirkwood.
Okay. Any battles? So we've got Award, McLaughlin and Power versus Kirkwood, Ericsson and Rossi. That is quite a mix.
Ericsson, Kirkwood and Rossi against Award, Power,
and Power.
McLaughlin.
We probably have to come back to that. That's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Power against teammates.
Yeah.
But which one of his teammates do you pick?
No idea.
Rossi, Award, former teammates, obviously.
Yeah. And then we need an Ericsson / Kirkwood versus McLaughlin. Goodness knows.
It's a tough one, that.
Are Ericsson and McLaughlin the same age? They might be a similar age.
I think Ericsson's older than McLaughlin by 3 years.
Oh, is he? Below. Ericsson's 35, McLaughlin is
32.
Right, 33. He's 33.
33, okay.
I don't know. We'll have to come back.
Let us know.
That one. But cool. That's all we got for Nashville. There's 3 weeks until Portland, so we'll have Indy Next debrief from Nashville coming up next week, and I'm sure we'll have a couple of guests on the show between now and Portland. But for this time, thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.